Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Profluence podcast. Here today with my man Brandon in one of the most exciting new emerging sport areas that's taken off. I mean, I can't get away from it here in Florida on the jiu-jitsu side. So excited to dive into what you're building and a ton of learning today. This will be a good one. I'm generally just interested to hear more about the space and how you're viewing it, and then building a property on top of it. So thanks for coming on.
Oh man, I'm super excited to get a chance to talk to you. I'm usually just strangling people in my daily life, so getting to talk to regular people is like a real privilege for me. I really
Yeah. And it's funny because down here in Tampa, I'm just going to call them combat gyms, mix of boxing, jiu-jitsu, whatever it is, MMA, they're taking off. So it's really cool just to see that space build up. I mean, I guess give us a little bit of your background into it. It sounds like you're more on the athlete competitive side, and then now flipping a little more to the business side of it.
Yeah, so I started training jiu-jitsu in 2006 in January. It's like a New Year's resolution. Me and my wife started training together. She was like, "Hey man," she sat me down on the couch. She's like, "You're getting kind of fat." Like I signed us up for martial arts.
Yeah.
And, my parents were both into martial arts growing up, and I thought it was dorky. I didn't want anything to do with it until,
Was it more like karate? Like that's how you viewed it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what it was. Both of my parents did that. And then, it came from me. I didn't really seek out jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu came looking for me. And man, it's been the most incredible journey. Like I'm a totally different human being in like all the right ways, I feel like, than I was when I first started. And yeah, you're right. I did start out on the athlete side. I never really envisioned myself in this position to be running, the biggest league or the only league and the biggest promotion in our sport. But here we are, man.
That's awesome.
It's been a crazy.
So where'd that come into play, right? I mean, you're doing it, and then you see this opportunity. What were sort of you fell into the athlete side? Did you fall into the business side, or was that actually a little more carefully thought out of, hey, we need to do something here?
Well, I've always been very entrepreneurial, right? And so my first journey into successful entrepreneurship was opening my gym here. I live in Decatur, Alabama. Tiny little towns, like 50,000 people, about 2 hours south of Nashville. And so my first real venture into running a business was, teaching people how to do jiu-jitsu, and so we've had the gym here since 2010. Started, I wasn't a world beater by any stretch of the imagination at that time. It was just something I was excited about and had an opportunity to, put a jiu-jitsu training facility in a place where that didn't exist. Like there was really nobody doing jiu-jitsu in the South, especially in the state of Alabama. In 2010, there was really nowhere to train. So I started flying out to Los Angeles to learn from a guy named Eddie Bravo. If you're familiar with Joe Rogan,
yeah.
Joe and I don't know Joe super well, but we got our black belts under the same guy. So that's the circle, right? And we just cracked it open. But the PGF was just an idea that I had. The PGF, Professional Grappling Federation, that's our league. It was just an idea that I had of, in the jiu-jitsu, I guess in sports, really, like every successful sport that we can think of, basketball, the NBA, MLB, soccer, hockey, every NFL, every single sport is based on a league concept, right? Except for the UFC and boxing. Combat sports are always based on this giant one-night event pay-per-view situation, and that's really cool. But all of the jiu-jitsu shows were following the UFC model. Like we're going to promote a one-night event. But the problem with that is kind of twofold. For the athletes, they don't really get that ramp. It's always like a big ramp up instead of a consistent performance week to week, right? And so it builds like all this anxiety amongst your upcoming athletes, and they never really perform and get the opportunity to build the skill set of competing itself. Like they build the skill set of jiu-jitsu, of grappling, but they never really truly build the skill set of competing, which is a separate skill set completely than being good at your sport, right? Competing is a completely separate skill set. And because it's always the big ramp up to one event, you don't build that consistency, you don't build that normalcy into going out and competing. And so the PGF was born from me trying to create an opportunity like that just locally here for my athletes and for other athletes in the region. And so it's like, well, we can try to structure this. Let's just copy basically what real sports are doing and see if we can just stretch jiu-jitsu across that format. So yeah, that was how the PGF was born, and we birthed it right here in Decatur, Alabama, in my gym. We just did it as a YouTube product with local athletes. I had literally $2,000 in my pocket and a bunch of favors to pull. I was like, hey, I got a great idea. Does anybody want to try it? And people did. And so we just slowly ramped it up until season 5. In season 5, Zoltan Bathory, who is the guitar player for Five Finger Death Punch, if you guys are familiar with heavy metal music, he is a jiu-jitsu black belt as well. Been training martial arts his whole life. He gets wind of what we're doing. He shows up in Decatur, Alabama, and hangs out with us for a week. I'm like, wow, this is crazy. And he ends up buying into the company. And then we moved it to Las Vegas for season 6. We put the biggest prize in the history of our sport right there on season 6. We repeated it again on season 7. We're about to repeat it again later this year on season 8. We signed a deal with UFC Fight Pass. We started signing, the best athletes in the world onto the platform. And so now we have not just the opportunity for athletes to build some normalcy and to build the skill of competing, but we also have an opportunity with a league to do way better storytelling. Because what is it that, like, okay, for example, I'm a huge fan of the NBA. I've been a Chicago Bulls fan since I'm 7 years old. Dude, I'm a John Paxson guy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I love the Bulls. And I still sign up for NBA League Pass. And if I miss a game live, I go back and catch it after practice. I'll stay up late if I have to. I'll lose sleep to watch my boys play ball. But there is no chance that the Bulls are making the playoffs this year. They're 10 games behind right now. They're 10 games out of even right now. But that's my squad. You know what I mean? Mm. And over the course of a season, you fall in love with an athlete's story, the ups, the downs, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. On a one-night event with one fight, you don't get that opportunity for storytelling that you get with a league. And all the, again, quote unquote, real sports figured that out a long time ago. But combat sports has never really found a way to pull that off. And MMA has tried it with teams and leagues and seasons a couple of times, but because you have to fight and get commission and get cracked in the head, and there's a lot more healing up that has to happen. So you can't fight MMA week to week to week, but you can fight jiu-jitsu 3 times a night. So
super cool.
That's kind of where we're sitting right now.
Yeah, it's awesome. And we'll dig a little deeper into the league itself here in a sec, but I just want to go back one step.
I'm sorry.
Because you brought up some interesting points just about Rogan and Bravo, and there's all these big names. I don't know, what are people calling them these days? Celebrities, influencers? I don't know. It's just like people with big followings, right?
Yeah.
But jiu-jitsu sort of become mainstream over the last, I'd call it, couple of years. Like, I never really heard about it, and then you listen to Rogan, he's talking about it, or whatever it is. What's driving a lot of that growth from just a mainstream perspective? Because before it was just not many people even knew about it.
Well, I think a big thing of it is that it's a chance for you to be involved in combat without a lot of the risk that come with actually doing combat. And, jiu-jitsu is, as a sport itself, is just now making its break, right? Like we're at that spot where skateboarding was at in like 1996. You know what I'm saying? We're right at that spot where the Tony Hawk game might pop off and send us into the stratosphere. But the hobby, the training, the martial art of jiu-jitsu, I mean, it's just such a no-brainer the first time you try it. You're like, oh, this is great. Not only am I doing something practical, not only am I getting exercise, but I'm getting an opportunity to get out on the mat and just be a regular dude. Like the cool thing about jiu-jitsu is it doesn't matter who you are coming in. You're homeless, you're a doctor, you're a celebrity, you're a plumber. Everybody's the same on the mat. And so you can let go of all of the pretense and just be a regular dude for the next 6 minutes, you know? And so to me, that's the real appeal to it. And then in return, it gives you real value to your life, you know? So I don't know, man, I could
No,
wax
that's great. And just
forever.
looking at some numbers that were provided before this, $2.5 billion business in the US, fastest growing combat sport, more than 200 million participants worldwide. So the growth is certainly there. Have you seen that from your facility, your training facility? Like, has that
Oh yeah.
grown a lot, and you've seen them hand in hand, and now as you're taking it to a league?
Yeah, I mean, I see it here with my own gym, this is my office at the gym, right?
Mm.
I come to my office every day. But I've also seen it like across pretty much every place in the world, man. You know, I'm in a position where I do commentary for a UFC Fight Pass Invitational. So I work as I'm the Joe Rogan of jujitsu for the UFC, right? And then Craig Jones Invitational, he just did, I don't know, I know he did over 1 million views a night on YouTube, back to back nights. He gave away $1 million. You know, that was a crazy event. I did commentary for that, for ADCC, for the World Championship. So I'm doing live analysis and commentary for literally all of the biggest events in our sport. And I get to travel all over the world every weekend to do jujitsu somewhere else. Serbia, Barcelona, Las Vegas, Costa Rica. I went to Kazakhstan twice last year. Like literally jujitsu is exploding all over the globe because it truly is like a universal language. I don't have to know anything about you. I don't have to speak your language. But when we slap and bump, we start communicating truly for the first time. And I know things about you that, you know, your own family doesn't know. I know what you're like
Yeah,
under pressure. I know what
yeah,
you're like when you get ahead. So yeah, I mean, it's exploding in a way that I don't want to say I didn't see it coming, but I didn't see it happening as fast as it's happening. It's like AI, dude. It's just like we're in the
countless.
singularity right now for jujitsu.
I love that.
Yeah, it's great.
Now, how do you go about educating people that have never stepped on a mat before, right? From the digital lens or from your league lens, so people start to even understand it, because I haven't ever participated in jiu-jitsu. It's definitely on the list of something to say, hey, I'm going to start this year, but I also know once I start, I probably won't stop. So maybe
Yeah,
that's why I'm
dude,
delaying.
dude, be careful.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I don't really know rules. Like if I watched, I wouldn't know a lot of what's going on. So how do you go about the education, or how are you planning to do that in the league? So people, we watch sports that we've never played, but you start to understand it, right? How do you educate the market?
So jujitsu traditionally has been a very slow paced sport, right? It doesn't have those big wow moments the way it's traditionally been presented. A lot of jujitsu tournaments and events will do no time limit matches. So, man, that's hard. That's a hard ask for a viewer, but it's an impossible ask for a media rights deal. Like, how long is your show? Yo, I don't know. They might fight for 3 hours. That's a crazy ask. Like that's a non-starter, right? So basically, what we've done with the PGF is we've taken a match and we've compressed it down into 6 minutes. So one match now is 6 minutes long, which is about half the time of any other jiu-jitsu promotion. Like even the Eddie Bravo Invitational, which was really kind of like the grandfather. That's the first show that tried to be pro, and they still exist, and they're killing it. They're doing a great job. But they do 10-minute matches. You know, they do a 16-man bracket, 10-minute matches. An athlete really, let's say he has 100% of his potential athletic output, he's going to spend that no matter what kind of time frame you put on him. And if you tell him he's got a 20-minute time limit, he's still going to spend the same 100% of his output, right? So what we try to do is just cut it down to 6 minutes and go push as hard as you can for the next 6 minutes. Be as exciting as possible. Make sure that you're fun to watch, even if you're not a winner, even if you don't win the match, if you're fun to watch, you're going to have great fans and you're going to have great storytelling. You're going to be able to build a brand. And so that's one of the main things that we're trying to do for these athletes is give them an opportunity to tell their story, to display who they are, to display what they're capable of, and to do it in a way that gives us great storytelling for the fans and makes it exciting to watch.
Any, I know you said you've been all over the world. Any hot spots where it's just absolutely top sport to watch, to participate in? Any you've seen like pockets that are really big?
Well, so in the United States, San Diego has traditionally been one of the big jiu-jitsu spots. Some of the best teams in the world are located right there in San Diego. But Austin, Texas has really been the one that's popping off in the last, I would say, 3 to 4 years. Austin, Texas, a lot of it, kind of after COVID, a lot of the big gyms were looking to get out of New York or out of California so that they could continue training, right? And so a lot of those big dogs like the New Wave team, the B team, John Donaher, Gordon Ryan, all of those guys popped into Austin, Texas. And then here comes Joe Rogan pops into Austin. And now all of that circle's popping in to support and watch. So Austin has been a real hot spot. Obviously, Brazil is the hot spot for jiu-jitsu. And I feel like that's a huge opportunity is, getting our product in front of a Portuguese speaking audience. I feel like there's a huge opportunity for growth right there. Europe has really grown a lot. UK has one of the best gyms in the world right there in London. And I would say those are the main hot spots, but really the UK is probably the top emerging spot. Australia's got some great guys that are coming up, but it's mostly in the United States and Brazil, with UK and Australia really starting to pop.
That makes sense. Yeah. So really just globally, and there's just certain little pockets that are taking off. I know you mentioned you've taken some concepts from just regular traditional sports, a ton of emerging sports popping up, which will put you in that category of, have you paid attention to anything like a pickleball, a padel, women's 3-on-3 basketball, whatever it is? Have you sort of looking at how some of them have really taken new markets, or how do you sort of place yourself into the space?
So, I don't know a lot about pickleball, but the 3-on-3 basketball is very interesting to me because I'm a basketball fan, right? So I've definitely watched quite a bit of the 3-on-3 basketball. But the Professional Lacrosse League, as I was starting to try to build this thing and go, how am I going to pull this off? I learned a lot from them. They have the traveling circus, basically. They don't have the home teams. So they just grab the whole show and be like, yo, we're going to Los Angeles this week. Yo, we're going to wherever, Chicago this week. And that guy that runs that thing is really, really smart. And so there's been a lot to learn from them.
The Rabels. Yeah, they've done a nice job. Now, as you head into season 8, I know you said you have the media rights deal, really just starting a gym. Now you're in Vegas. Like, where do you see this? Where are you trying to take it? What's on the roadmap of now, like, we're doing this thing and there's nothing stopping us but ourselves?
You're exactly right, dude. There's nothing really that's going to be able to stop it, except for if I drop the ball and screw it up completely, which I'm a winner, so I don't have any expectation that that's going to happen. I'm going to win. Ultimately, I think this is an ESPN deal, and that's what I'd like to see. I do feel in a lot of ways, perhaps I'm planting trees that I'll never personally get to sit in the shade of, but I know for sure that I can build something that generations behind me are going to be able to benefit from. And I really view the PGF as like my love letter back to jiu-jitsu. Like, thank you for what you did for me and what you've done for my family and my friends. Let me do everything in my power, regardless of what it cost me.
Yeah.
I'm going to give everything to it and try to give it back to the sport.
I love that.
We're taking and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So a lot of these sports, right, they have pipelines, right? You have college, right? You go from high school to college to pros, right? If you look at the NBA, it's typical path. What's a path for jiu-jitsu look like to get to as your league becomes this staple and it's like, this is the pinnacle of the sport, which is where you're trying to get it? What is the pipeline to even get there? Or is it, that needs to be built out even a little bit too?
Well, so the pipeline, it's not defined tightly, I would say, but I think there's 2 potential pipelines. As it exists right now, it starts in the local gyms with your kids' classes. And your kids' classes move up. When they want to start competing, they move up to open tournaments. And then the athletes become teenagers and young adults, and they move into regional tournaments that pay a little bit. And then they move into national, and then they move into like the world championships, like ADCC or what we do with the PGF or UFC Fight Pass, right? So there are a couple of opportunities that way. But I do think ultimately that we're going to have to find a way to get this into schools. So it goes high school, college, semi-pros, pros. That's a much larger project. There's a couple of people that are like really pushing to try to get jiu-jitsu into the Olympics, and I think that that's a potential route as well. But that's not really like the pro side. You know, that's the passion side. That's the jiu-jitsu is a real sport side, but it's not the path to make people want to quit everything and dedicate their lives to jiu-jitsu because they know that it's going to pay them out in the long run. And that's traditionally been the problem with pro jiu-jitsu shows is just, you know, small audience, not that much money on the other side of a small audience. But now with money starting to come into the sport, which, you know, we were the first ones to like really start that ball rolling. I think that's a real possibility. And so we're starting to see athletes that are the kind of athlete that could have played college football or did play college football. This guy could have played in the NBA, but he chose to pursue grappling instead. Or guys that were UFC caliber athletes are going, man, maybe I want to do combat, but I don't want to get CTE. Jiu-jitsu is the perfect spot for an athlete like that.
So in the family of, we'll just call it combat, right? And maybe I'm even botching this, but you have martial arts, which again, I might be botching this, but you have like karate, you have wrestling, you have boxing, you have MMA, you have jiu-jitsu. Like, how do all these sit? Are there family trees? Are there certain, you know, better paths for where people come into jiu-jitsu? And what does that whole look like as just bucketing into, we'll call it, I don't know, combat?
So there's really just a couple of sports that make up true MMA. There's jiu-jitsu, there's wrestling, and there's striking. So we could call that boxing and Muay Thai, which you kind of need both of those. But really, as far as combat sports go, it's kind of the only ones that exist. Like a lot of MMA and jiu-jitsu athletes definitely get their start with like karate in a strip mall somewhere, but the skill set doesn't actually transfer all that well. There are things you can learn that are useful, but it's a supplement. Those are supplemental arts, I would say, but they're a great introduction into the world of martial arts. But yeah, it's jiu-jitsu, it's wrestling, and it's boxing and Muay Thai. Muay Thai, there's a lot of places to learn in the United States, but it's not that big of a sport. For some reason, kickboxing just hasn't been able to figure it out. And then wrestling is huge. It's insane, but there's not really a professional pipeline for it. So wrestling tends to feed into MMA and into jiu-jitsu. Boxing and Muay Thai tend to feed directly into MMA only.
Yeah. And just now going for regular people, if there was one of those one of those skills to learn, you think jiu-jitsu is the most valuable just from like if you had an everyday, you know, we always think like, hey, if I need to protect myself or there's something like, is that the most encompassing? That's probably the best to know, or how do you view that? I know you're biased a little bit, but
I'm totally biased, but I'm biased because I chose jiu-jitsu out of all the other arts that I used to train. You know what I'm saying? Like I boxed, I've done Muay Thai, done wrestling, I've done karate, you know, I have black belts in multiple other arts. But the only art that I still do every day is jiu-jitsu, because it sounds crazy because we're trying to strangle people and break their arms and legs, but it's way less impact on your body. You know, there's not that much falling. I can like, all right, me and you are going to slap, bump and figure it out. I might just sit to my butt, pull guard and try to get to your leg to break it. And then you have every opportunity to stop before anything breaks. And so we can practice it over and over and over at full speed. To me, that's what makes jiu-jitsu so practical, is that we can practice real combat situations without having to worry about really hurting each other. You know, we can't get into a boxing ring without and really try to figure it out without one of us getting a concussion. You know, You can do that, and I can do it every day, repeatedly. I can go twice a day if my body will hold up to the general wear and tear of playing sports every day. So in that way, jiu-jitsu is a lot more like going to the gym and playing pickup basketball every day. You
Hmm.
know, it's something I can do every day without really having to worry about trashing my body.
Yeah, well, that's good perspective. As you look, to trends in general in sports, a question we try to ask everyone as we get close to the 30-minute mark. Anything you're paying attention to from a macro. I know you'd said, oh, we looked at things that the NBA did or whatever to piece it in. Now, from a macro or other trends, like, are you seeing anything where you're like, oh, this is interesting, we need to keep an eye on this for what we're building?
Well, I think that there's a couple of real plays that if we can figure out how to pull this lever, then it's going to make a huge difference, not just in what we're trying to build, but for the entire sport as a whole. And I think daily fantasy sports is the number one lever right there. If we can get locked up with a DraftKings or a FanDuel, now you got people that don't even train jiu-jitsu that are suddenly interested. And so for me, that's the most ideal play. I think the idea of tokenization is a really smart potential play. That's something I still have a lot of education to do on. So I would hate to like wax eloquently on something like that, but I think tokenization is really interesting. Karate Combat has done some interesting things with that. But to me, it's daily fantasy sports because we have the league, the only league. I think we're in a perfect position to make a play with somebody like that.
Yeah, no, those are good ones. Definitely the blockchain tokenization. That's an interesting trend. Obviously, fantasy sports keeps growing, emerging leagues. I think you live in the middle, but I was telling someone this earlier. I think football and basketball, we've been seeing viewership come down. I think they're not as violent as they used to be. And people, that's why you've seen the UFC grow a lot too. Like, people do, like, it's just more entertainment. So I think it's interesting. I think combat, that's why it's really taken off in general.
Yeah, like I've heard Dana White say this before. He's like, listen, man, you're standing on a street corner. A hockey match breaks out over here. A basketball game breaks out over here. A baseball game breaks out over here. And a fight breaks out on this corner. Which one are you going to watch? It's a no-brainer. All eyes go to the fight. And so, yeah, I think it's the ultimate. I mean, all sports in a way are like simulated war. Like I'm taking territory from you in football. You're trying to take territory from me, and I'll blow through your head. That's what I have to do to get that yard. And jiu-jitsu and MMA are really the ultimate expression of simulated combat.
Yeah, well, I always say, for better or worse, if they brought back the Coliseum, it'd probably be one of the most viewed sporting events out there. So
it would be the most viewed. Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, better or worse. Maybe that's not the right idea, but somebody's going to make $1 out of that for sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Super cool. Yeah. No, Brandon, I appreciate you coming on. Where can people learn more about the PGF, Professional Grappling Federation?
Man, I think the best way to pick up info on it is just to head over to our YouTube. It's PGF World on YouTube. Obviously, we're on same handle on Instagram.
Cool. And we'll put the links and stuff. So yeah, that's perfect.
But we have a documentary that comes out every season. And it just shows everything about the league. So the first episode of that for this season actually drops tomorrow on YouTube.
Nice.
You can get a great behind the scenes look at these athletes, their stories, their journeys, their heartbreaks. So I think that's the best place.
Love that. Awesome.